would like to welcome you to the Dayton Masonic Center. At this time, please take note of the exit signs in the auditorium. In the event of the fire alarm sounding or other emergency, we ask that you exit the building in a slow and orderly manner. We would also remind you at this time that food and beverages are permitted within the auditorium. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the playing of the national anthem.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. All right. All right. So I'm here for the turn up, so y'all got to stay with me. My name is Chris Percy, and I am a field campaign manager with MoveOn.org. Yay, Move On. I am here with my good friend Nicole Gill, who is the ED of the Tax March. Come on, Tax March. Yeah. I know that's right. Okay, so welcome everybody. Welcome to this rally. We are really excited to have you here. We're excited because we have work to do. And, yeah, we do. And in the spirit of that work to do, I'm going to ask us to keep the energy high. So I'm going to say, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. We have work to do. We saw what happened in the middle of the night. Right? Terrible. But what we know is that there is power and change in the people who are here right now. People all over the country, who are working, who are pushing, who are fighting. We are going to stand up to this. So, good afternoon, everybody. It's a good afternoon because we have work to do. I am energized. I am ready. I woke up ready. I woke up like this. Oh, sorry for the Beyonce. That is the Beyonce thing. Okay, so, again, my name is Chris Percy with MoveOn.org. We are in partnership with Not One Penny. We are doing rallies all over. We have events happening now all across the country where people are at their congressman's offices, letting them know that we will not stand for this, holding them accountable, doing the work. We are not going to sit by. Good afternoon, everybody. We are not going to sit by, right? And so right before I introduce Nicole, again, we are here to fight this. And today we are going to hear not only from Bernie, yay, come on, Bernie, but we are also going to hear from everyday folks, real stories of people who will be affected if this goes through. So as they come out, some of them might be a little nervous, but good afternoon, everybody. And so when they come out, encourage them, because we are all family here. We're all working together here, all right? Good afternoon, everybody. Nicole.
You're introducing the first person, right? So I'll throw it back to you. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. Give it up. Give it up for Chris. Let's give it up for Move On, Not One Penny, and all the other partners that made this possible. Yeah. So like Chris said, my name is Nicole Gill. I'm the executive director of Tax March, and we're leading the Not One Penny campaign. We have fought, and we're going to keep fighting to make sure that not one penny in tax cuts go to millionaires, billionaires, and wealthy corporations. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what happened last night, or this morning, I should say. Yeah. So around 2 a.m., while most of us were sleeping, Senate Republicans voted on a tax bill they hadn't even seen. Okay? It's despicable, yeah. It had handwritten notes on it, okay? This is the United States Senate. If I handed in a term paper with handwritten notes on it, I think I'd get an F, right? The bill that they passed last night is going to give 87 million middle-class families a tax hike. Yeah. It's going to take health insurance away from 13 million Americans. Why? Why'd we have to do this? Why'd we have to do it last night? Because the Republican Party represents their donors, not their constituents. And it's a shame, right? It's a shame. You're here, I'm here, and we are not going to stand for it. We are not going to stand for cuts in Medicare to pay for tax cuts for donors. We're not going to do it. We are not going to cut Medicaid so that companies can ship more jobs overseas. No. Not going to stand for it. We will not stand for cuts to public education so that Donald Trump and his family can get $1 billion tax cut. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Republicans out there, obviously watching this live stream, mark my words, you will pay for this. You and I, working Americans, have sacrificed enough, so let's make them pay. I want you all to do one thing because this fight isn't over. The House is still going to have to vote one more time, okay? So get out your phones. I want you to program this number in and save it and use it. The number for the Capitol switchboard. See, these ladies already have it. They know where it's at. The phone number is 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121. Set yourself a reminder, and every day you need to call your representative and tell them that you will not stand for this and that not one penny in tax cuts should go to millionaires, billionaires, and wealthy corporations. Not one penny. This fight isn't over, and we will keep fighting. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I like y'all. Okay. So now we're going to hear, oh, thank you. Yeah. All right. So now we're going to hear from some everyday folks who are from Dayton, who have some real stories to tell. So the first person is my dear friend now. I just met her a few minutes ago. Porsha Bolger. She is a phenomenal woman. I was reading her bio, and it's just a list of stuff, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to do in my life. She is a Bernie delegate. She's part of Ross Countian. She's co-founder of Ohio Progressive Alliance. SAVE. She is part of SAVE Main Street. She's a founding member of Women for Bernie and founder of Appalachians Rising and Lead for Bernie Nina 2020. Come on. She is also a member of Ohio Poor People's Campaign, and she is on the organizing committee. I want you, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Right over here, y'all look too quiet. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. So, I want you all to please give it up, encourage her as she comes. Come on, Porsha Bolger.
I'd like to start by saying, power to the people! No justice, no peace! So hello, Dayton. Hello, Dayton! I'd like to thank Move On and Not One Penny for hosting this event, and to all of you for being here today. I'm very honored to be up here and speaking with you. And from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank Senator Bernie Sanders. And Senator Nina Turner for their leadership. I am a proud Appalachian woman, wife, mother, grandmother, and yes, great-grandmother, who was born where I live in Ross County at the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. And we're not dumbasses. We're real smart folk. And I am also very proud to be known as a Bernie bro. They came after my people last night. They came after my children and my grandchildren and my great-grandbabies. Mr. Ryan and Mr. McConnell, do you think Appalachian women like me with steel in our backbones will yield? You are kidding yourselves if you think we will be turned around. Did you self-professed Christians not learn about Isaiah chapter 10? Woe to those who make unjust laws, to those who issue oppressive decrees, to deprive the poor of their rights and withhold justice from the oppressed of my people, making widows their prey and robbing the fatherless. Woe unto them. Last night, the Senate voted to rob the working middle class and the working poor, the elderly, our children, students, and veterans, to further enrich the filthy rich and large corporations. These so-called Christians say they follow the teachings of Jesus. They do not. They worship at the altar of money and power and hold tight to the philosophy of Ayn Rand. They lie and say they worship at the altar of Christ. In fact, they kneel and bend their knees and kiss the rings of the Koch brothers and other billionaire donors who are hell-bent on smashing the 99%. Listen very carefully, Mr. Ryan, Mr. McConnell, and your greed-filled ilk. We, the people of the United States, are mobilizing. My sisters and brothers are rising up together to fight against the attack that you are giving to our people. And we will not yield until our people are free from the money changers and those who worship money and power. We, the people, see your tax scam for what it is, and we will overcome. Stay tuned, Paul and Mitch. We are coming for you.
Give it up for Porsha. All right, you guys are getting warmed up. This is good. This is good. All right, we got more of this to go. Oh, hand out more posters. Somebody. This is the instruction. So I do what I'm told. All right, our next speaker is a man named David Sparks. Let me tell you a little bit about David. David was a delegate for Senator Bernie Sanders in 2016, and he has served as a union president here in Dayton in the public schools. All right? He's also a journalist and a documentarian, and he is a founding member of the Dayton Working Families Party. Give it up for David Sparks.
How's everybody doing today? Fantastic. Hey, first of all, I want to thank every single person who has helped out in this progressive movement that continues to get larger and larger and larger. I want to ask you one question this morning. Are you pissed off beyond belief? In the last month, Republicans have tried to take my father's pension as a state of Kentucky employee. He worked over 20 years, earned his retirement. Now they're taking that, and now they're going after their Medicare. This has become personal for all of us. And if you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, let's get on the progressive political train. We came this close in 2016. We have all the momentum of a tsunami of power that will take over this country and will put us back into the spot that my grandparents sought almost 70 years ago when they moved to Dayton, Ohio from Mount Vernon, Kentucky. Poor as church mice. They didn't have any way to make a living. They were in the middle of the Depression. And so they came to Dayton where they could get a union job. They raised 10 kids, 10 children, and they all turned out to be successful because my grandfather could make enough money for the family not to be completely sunk in poverty and all that is involved with that. And I tell you what, everyone we've got in this room right now, if we will all, I'm going to exhort you to do something this year. One of the things that I got big into in the Bernie campaign, and one of the reasons I got involved with the Working Families Party, is that we're about going door to door, person to person, all this garbage they put on the airwaves telling you this person's that and this person's that. We're about issues, and we're taking it one at a time. I exhort you this next year to donate 2 weeks, or 2 hours, I should say, 2 hours every week to a candidate, whether that is making calls, whether that is helping the candidates get connections. The candidates are only the tip of the spear. You are the spear. And we have had enough. In 1984, I went with my social studies class to watch Ronald Reagan begin the destruction of America by telling us year after year, decade after decade, that somehow these rich guys are just going to come sprinkle some magic jobs on all of us. It's not happened. It never will happen. Get on the streets. I love every single one of you. Keep fighting. Never, ever, ever quit. Peace. Power to the people.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm scared to speak after these folks. Okay. We're going to move right along. Our next speaker is a wonderful mother from the area. Her name is Heather Dent. She is mother of Reed, a medically fragile boy with short bowel syndrome and a Medicaid recipient. She is also a nurse who is currently paid to care for Reed at home thanks to the Medicaid waiver. So, Heather and family, come on through.
Hi. I'm Heather. This is Reed. This is my husband, Andrew. I just was asked to speak because I'm a mother of a medically fragile child. Reed is one of a set of twins that was born at 29 weeks in Indiana. He was doing well until 4 weeks, and he contracted necrotizing enterocolitis, which is the #1 killer of preemies. He went from doing just fine to dying in front of us. But the next day he had surgery. They resected 75% of his intestine. So now he lives with short bowel syndrome, but he survived. He had a 2% chance. So he was in the NICU for 6 months, and we made the decision to move here to Ohio. That's where I'm from, where my family is, and where Reed specialists are in Cincinnati. Because of Medicaid, I am a nurse, and the Medicaid waiver has covered all of Reed's speech therapy, occupational therapy, intense feeding therapy that's offered through Cincinnati Children's. And they also pay me to be able to stay home with him because as a child with a central line who is fed TPN and a child with a G button who's fed tube feeding, he can't go to a typical daycare. So that's what's important to us is cuts in Medicaid mean that, in my opinion, in my eyes, it's saying my son doesn't matter. And he does. So that's why we're here. We're here to fight for him and for our other short bowel syndrome warriors. It's a rare disease, so less than 1% of the population have it. You never outgrow it. It's a chronic illness. There's no cure. But he's doing great, and he's knows his letters and numbers. He's going to start kindergarten next year. And and it's all thanks to Medicaid. I don't have to pay for his care, and there'd be no way I physically could. My husband and I both have professional degrees, but in order to pay millions of dollars in care is just, there's no way we could have done it. So we fight, he fights, and we'll continue to fight with him every day of his life. Thank you. Let's give them one more round of applause. Reed was letting me play with his Mickey Mouse toy behind the stage. He's a good sharer. All right, our next speaker is a student at the University of Cincinnati. Yeah. She's also the incoming president of the UC College Democrats. She is an activist on campus and founder of the UC Progressive Alliance. She's a proud patient and volunteer with Planned Parenthood. Please help me bring on stage Caroline Lim.
Good afternoon, everyone. Woo! I heard some Bearcats out there. Can I get another round of applause for the UC Bearcats? All right. There's a game today, so we got to make sure that other people know we're here. My name is Caroline Lim, and I'm a student at the University of Cincinnati. And in case you're wondering, I'm still on my parents' health insurance. Thanks, Obama. And that matters because I have health issues that require care, especially reproductive health care. I, like many women in the U.S., have endometriosis, and I get my care from Planned Parenthood. Yeah, we can do a round of applause for Planned Parenthood. Without the care that I receive at Planned Parenthood, my life would be a lot more painful. And I'm here standing with Planned Parenthood in opposition to this tax bill because I, like all of you today, and unlike some of our elected representatives, actually care about what would happen to the 13 million people who would have their health care coverage taken away by this bill. The extremists in Congress couldn't repeal the Affordable Care Act earlier this year because of massive outcry across the country. They couldn't block patients from going to Planned Parenthood because women stood up and spoke out. But now they're using this tax bill to sneak in new efforts to take away health care from millions of people who rely on the ACA. By one estimate, this tax bill would cost 433,000 Ohioans their health insurance, and premiums would spike nearly $1,500. I don't really know what else we can tell them. There's no other way we can tell them this is not what we want. Stop messing with our health care. And we're all here today because the cost of this tax bill is too high, especially for women like me who need care. My endometriosis doesn't care about Congress's agenda, doesn't care about who's in the White House, even though I might. And we all need and deserve access to high-quality, affordable health care. We all know what this bill is. Another piece of the foundation they're pulling out from under the Affordable Care Act. And it is a direct attack on the people who rely on it most. Women, young people, people of color, and people of low income. These are the people who will suffer. They're writing checks in Washington that we have to cash with our health and with our lives. So we're here today to tell them that we are not going down without a fight. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. All right. So, from Yellow Springs, Ohio, and an MBA student at The Ohio State University, Fisher School of College, our next speaker is Sammy Suburb.
Hello, Dayton. My name is Sammy, and I am a graduate student at OSU. But more importantly, I'm a husband and a father to 2 wonderful children. I chose to go back to school because I had a passion and an ambition to find a career that was impactful and could make the lives of those around me better. As a grad student, I get an education, but I also work for OSU to help educate the next generation of leaders in our society. As payment for my work, OSU waives 50% of my tuition and pays me about $800 per month. Under the House Republicans' tax plan, I would be responsible for paying taxes on that waived tuition. Now, I am fortunate because my wife is the breadwinner in our family. She worked hard to get a PhD. She works hard to be a good mother to our children and to maintain a successful career in education. We need more women like her in Washington. So my wife and I, we know how important higher education is to lifting Americans into the middle class. But Republicans, they plan to give tax breaks to the wealthy. Tax graduate students who, by the way, are doing the work to develop next-generation technologies and solve problems right here in the United States that make the lives of every single person in this world better. Republicans want to increase taxes to graduate students and add $1 trillion to the U.S. deficit. Apparently, they haven't heard there's a student debt crisis either. So here's what I want you to do. Call your representatives. Write, march, peacefully protest. Sign the petition to end gerrymandering in Ohio. And let them know you will not stand for tax cuts for the wealthy when hardworking Americans are struggling. And if they do not listen, I want you to vote. Thank you.
All right. I'm really excited about our next speaker. A couple reasons. He is a former refugee from Iraq. He went on to train our Marines during the Iraq War. He's also a graduate of the University of Dayton Law School. And he was recently elected to the Dayton School Board. He is a champion for our public education and our students, and it's also his birthday today. Yeah. Help me welcome with a big birthday welcome, Mohammed Al-Hamdani.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Well, what an honor to be here. Thank you, Dayton. Thank you, MoveOn.org. Now one more penny. Thank you. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my birthday. What I didn't anticipate is being robbed by the senators last night, by the GOP senators. I did not anticipate to be robbed on my birthday, but I was. They robbed us. You know, this tax scam that they passed last night, it looked rougher than any paper I ever did in college. In fact, it looked rougher than some of the first drafts that I did in college. Can you imagine handing in a 500-page paper that you typed overnight with handwritten notes and revisions on the side and turn it in as your final product without anybody else reading it and somehow expect to get an A on it? That's never going to happen. We don't expect our students to do that, right? How come our senators think, our Republican senators think they can do that? That's right. Whoa. There are kids in the house. There are kids in the house, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this bill was a massive handout to corporations, to millionaires, and we have to pay the bill. Now, you heard, you know, it's cutting everything that we care about, whether it's Medicare, the ACA, middle-class folks are going to end up paying the bill. But you know who else is going to pay for this? Our children. You know, when they first came out with this scheme, you know, there's a lot of talk about, you know, taking the deduction away from state and local taxes that most of us can deduct right now. Do you know who that hurts? Public schools. Our public schools are hurt by this. This is how we fund our public schools. Why are they trying to hurt our kids? I should have never asked another question, I know. You know what else repealing those deductions does? It lowers your home values. They're also coming after the mortgage deduction, mortgage interest rate deduction, which lowers your home values, which hurts public schools. We've known they've been coming after public schools year after year, and they've been coming after the ACA for year after year. Well, this is their way. It's this tax bill. Last night, these guys, these Republican senators, think they won the class war. They think they won last night. Well, I have news for them. The battle just started. We'll see you in 2018. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. All right. Don't let the energy die now. We need to do too much. So good afternoon, everyone. Like I said earlier, I like y'all. Okay. I am really happy right now. Really, guys, I'm really happy. Because one of my absolute favorite people, I have the honor of introducing. She is a, no? Gotcha, no. She is somebody who is no stranger to Ohio, because she's from Ohio. Look at her. She is a champion for labor. Good afternoon, everybody. She is a champion for women's reproductive health. Good afternoon, everyone. She is a champion for voting rights. How y'all doing? She is for the eradication of wealth and income inequality. How y'all doing? She is president of our revolution. Huh? She is founding fellow of the Sanders Institute. Good afternoon, everybody. She is a fiery. She knows what she's talking about. I'm low-key scared of her because she is so wonderful and so professional and so fired up, ready to go. She is everything. I just love watching her on TV. So, give it up now for State Senator Nina Turner.
Dayton, Ohio! Dayton, Ohio! In the house. Man. God, dog, it is so good to be in Dayton, Ohio. I want to thank Chris for that wonderful introduction, except for I'm slightly scared of her. Man, Dayton, y'all, I mean, come on now. Come on now. Now, see, I'm talking to family because I'm back in Ohio. And I stopped by to tell you a few things along with the magnificent senator from Vermont, Bernie Sanders. So can I just tell you a few things this afternoon? Just a few. Just a few. Hold on. Get the water out. Listen. The GOP wanted to talk about trickle down. See, nothing ever trickles down to the working poor and the middle class. What they call trickle down, I call tricked down. Because they trying to trick some folks. And I hope that there's no confusion because I know 4 or 5 of y'all just got off work and 10 more you got to go to work right after this. And you understand clearly that trickle down economics does not work. It's a trick down. Say trick down. You know, I got a chance to meet a mother last night in Louisville, Kentucky, who told me that her son has a congestive heart failure condition. And she showed the picture of her son and she said to me, she said, not only is it hard for me to get life insurance for my son or health care insurance for my son, it's hard for me to get life insurance for my son. But then we got GOP who have the pure unadulterated gall to pass on the backs of the working poor and the middle class in this country a bill that is not trickle down, but that has tricked down, that not only will we have to pay for in our lifetime, but our children's children, our children's children, our children's children. I bring you word to Dayton that we tired of it. We are sick and tired of it, and we not going to take it anymore. We not falling for the tricks anymore. So now, Dayton, we are gathered here today. The choir is here today to say amen, but we got to do a lot more than say amen. We have to bring our collective consciousness to the fore to make sure that the GOP understand what happens when you leave the working poor and middle class behind. We're not going for the trick down. We're not going for the trick down. See, Booker T. Washington once said that there are 2 ways of exerting one's strength. One is by pushing down and the other is by pulling up. We need some more elected officials, not only in the Congress, but all over this great country who understands that the people's power is not their power, it is the people's power, and they need to use that power to push some folks up, to pull some folks up, to lift some folks up. See, we're not falling for the tricks anymore. So I just want to bring word to 2, 3 of you that when we leave this place today, we have to be even more committed and dedicated to let the Republicans know that next year and the year after that and the year after that and the year after that, that they're going to pay a price for what they did with that GOP bill. They're going to pay a price at the polls. You know, my chairman of our revolution said the following in his statement. He said, I bet you a whole bunch of the donor class was doing a dance last night. But this is what I will say to you, that there's no force on earth that is more powerful than a conscious-minded, committed people on the move. We are on the move. We are on the move. So don't you worry. See, we gonna get what Congress Barbara Jordan talked about. I want you to follow me, Dayton. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Just listen to me for one moment. This is what the Congresswoman said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want an America as good as it's promised. Can I get 2 or 3 amens? Can I get 2 or 3 amens? Can I get 2 or 3 amens? See, this is not complicated. That $1.5 trillion tax giveaway that they gave the corporations and the wealthiest folks in this country, how many babies could they have educated? How many roads could they have rebuilt? How many elders could we have lifted up? See, we're not falling for the trickle down. It's a trick down. Say trick down. We want some folks who are going to lift some folks up. And can I, by the way, just say to my ladies, where you at? I said, ladies, where you at? You know, the Republicans have been talking about trickle down for a long time. Ladies, it is 2017 and none of that is trickle down to us. Say whole damn dollar. We want it. We want our money. So we need folks who understand that they have an obligation to lift folks up. So whether it's Medicare for all, lift some folks up. Investing in colleges and universities and vocational care, lift some folks up. Making sure that homeless folks that I see every day, not only in the state of Ohio, but in Washington, D.C., that we need to lift some folks up. And that our veterans live in a country that even when they sign up to fight for our freedom, they come back here and they get nothing. Let's lift some folks up. We're not going for the trickle down. They playing tricks, Dayton, Ohio. But when you leave here this afternoon, it's going to be about what you're going to do. See, we got to push and breathe. We got to protest and plan, but we got to persevere. We got to make sure that the elected elitist class in this country understand that they not going to get away with the trickle down. We not falling for the tricks. Your seat, we coming for your seat. We going to put some folks in office. How about we put some folks in office who actually care about somebody? How about that? All right, Dayton, Ohio, I got to say the Senator Sanders got down with the show enough get down last night. And he called this bill immoral. And he said this tax break right here is only a preview for how they are going to try to destroy Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. And the only thing that is standing between them and that is you and you and you and you and you. We're not going for the tricks. My God, Dayton, Ohio, we can't go for the tricks. 2018 is coming, 2019, 2020, 2021. We got to show some folks some stuff. So Dayton, are you ready? I say, Dayton, Ohio, are you ready? You know, I bring to you the coolest millennial I know. Where you at, millennials? I'm going to tell you something. I'm trying to catch up with Senator Bernie Sanders to be the second oldest millennial. Can I get an amen? I'm going to bring you the people's champion. Senator Sanders has been consistent. Say consistent. Senator Sanders is authentic. Say authentic. Senator Sanders has been working for the people for a long, long, long time. Say long time. I think it was the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. who said longevity has its place. Say has its place. Dayton, Ohio, I want you to join me. Give it up. Let's feel the energy in the room. Let's do some energy in the room. Come on, Dayton, Ohio. I bring to you Senator Bernie Sanders.
Whoa! Thank you, Dayton. You guys look beautiful from here, and you are beautiful. Thank you so much for coming out. Let me begin by thanking MoveOn.org and Not One Penny for organizing the event. And let me thank all of the folks who spoke so eloquently and talked about what we need to do as a nation. And let me thank former Ohio State Senator Nina Turner. And I'll tell you why. Senator Turner has been running all over this country doing the most important work that anybody can do, and that is to make a political revolution. And that revolution is not Bernie and it's not Nina. That revolution is you. What the revolution is about is when people wake up in the morning and they say, I may not have a whole lot of money and maybe I don't have a PhD in economics, but I am a very powerful world. I'm a very powerful person. And with my brothers and my sisters, I can transform this world. And that is really what the political revolution is about, because when we understand that when we come together, we can transform our community, our state, our nation. When we understand that, there is nothing that can stop us. So I am delighted that all of you are here this afternoon, but I hope you will take from this meeting the understanding that yes, you can run for state legislature, and you can run for the school board, and you can run for city council, you can run for the Congress. What the system thrives on, what the establishment hopes and prays every day, is that people fall asleep, people think they can't do anything, and they do not get involved. And what our job is nothing less than to make a political revolution by revitalizing American democracy. Just give you one small example. 4 years ago in 2014, Republicans won a landslide victory. 37% of the American people voted. Almost 2 out of 3 Americans did not vote in that midterm election. If we go from 37% to 50% in this election, Democrats will control the House and the Senate. We're on our way to the White House. And that is not a heavy lift. Asking 1 out of 2 people to vote is not a heavy lift. We can do that. Now, last night, there was a rally that we held in Louisville. As Senator Turner told you, I was unable to be there because I was in Washington, D.C., watching in an incredible way the biggest act of thievery in the modern history of this country. Last night, trillions of dollars were stolen from the American people. But I got news from Mr. McConnell and from Mr. Ryan. They are not going to get away with that. Now, the reason why in the House and in the Senate, these guys put together such a mammoth bill, such a far-reaching bill behind closed doors. Literally, we saw parts of that bill last night, 2 hours before the vote. And the reason they didn't want us or you to see what was in that bill is the more you see what's in the bill, the more you know how awful that bill is. Now, I realize that I am in the great state of Ohio, and I know, and I am more than aware that Donald Trump won Ohio. I think it was by 8 points. And I want to talk not just to you, but to those people who voted for Donald Trump. And I think the reason that many people in Ohio and people in Vermont and people all over this country voted for Donald Trump is because they looked around them and they said, you know, the rich are getting much richer, middle class is shrinking, got families down the block are living in poverty. That's the reality. And Donald Trump gets up and he tells the people of Ohio and the people of America that he was going to stand with the working families of this country. He was on their side. Well, a year has come and gone since Mr. Trump won, and I think it is now clear to most Americans that Donald Trump was not telling the truth. I know I will shock you to suggest that he was lying and that, in fact, he had no intention of fulfilling the campaign promises that he made. And let me just give you, and I also want to speak, and there may be some people here who voted for Trump, and I understand that. I'm not here to condemn anybody. I understand that. People are hurting in Ohio, in Vermont, all over this country. People are in pain. People are worried about their kids. And Donald Trump said, I hear your pain. I'm going to stand with you. And people responded to that message, and I understand that. But what I want to say to people today, especially the people who may have voted for Donald Trump, I want you to understand that what he said on the campaign trail was totally different than what he is now doing as president. And I want to give you some examples. I want to give you a few examples. I can go on all day on that, just a few examples. During the campaign, you may recall that Donald Trump said that he would provide health insurance to everybody. Remember that? Everybody. Well, as president, he ended up supporting legislation that would have thrown 32 million Americans off of health insurance and substantially raised premiums for older workers. And by the way, that bill, which, thank God, with your help, we defeated, that bill would have been especially harmful to a state like Ohio because you are dealing with a very serious opioid epidemic, and that bill would have cut $1 trillion from Medicaid, the major source of funding for opioid treatment. Now, during the campaign, Donald Trump told the people of Ohio and the people of America that he was not going to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. He said, I am a different type of Republican. I'm not going to do that. Well, as president, that was during the campaign, this is now, as President Trump supported a budget resolution that would cut $1 trillion from Medicaid over a 10-year period and $473 billion from Medicare. Candidate Trump said that he was going to stop the pharmaceutical industry from getting away with murder. Well, I have to say that what he said during the campaign was right. The drug companies are getting away with murder. They're ripping us off every day. They're charging us the highest prices in the world. And that is why I and others are fighting for legislation that would substantially lower the cost of prescription drugs in America. That's what we are doing, but Mr. Trump recently nominated as head of the Health and Human Services a pharmaceutical industry executive who has spent his entire career jacking up the price of insulin and other life-saving prescription drugs. So he told the American people he was going to lower the cost of prescription drugs, and then he appoints to the important position a guy from the pharmaceutical industry. Candidate Trump said he was going to drain the swamp. Remember that? And that he, Donald Trump, was the only person who could stand up to Wall Street and stop them from getting away with murder. Well, as president, Trump has appointed more billionaires to his cabinet than any president in American history. His chief economic advisor, Gary Cohn, is the former president of Goldman Sachs. And his secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, also comes from Wall Street. Hey, Mr. Trump, you don't drain the swamp by filling your administration with executives from Goldman Sachs, ExxonMobil, and the big drug companies. That is not draining the swamp. That is the swamp. Now, let me just say a few words about what happened last night. Now, President Trump, a few days ago, was in Missouri, and he said to the people there, he said, you know, I'm a billionaire, but I and other wealthy people, we are not going to be benefiting from this tax bill. It's the middle class that will benefit. You guys are catching on. Once again, the president is lying. According to every independent study, the legislation passed last night gives incredibly large tax breaks to the very, very wealthy. It raises taxes on millions of middle-class families. It leaves 13 million more Americans without health insurance. It raises health insurance premiums by 10% a year, and it raises the deficit by $1.4 trillion. And by the way, especially for a state like Ohio, one of our great manufacturing states, it makes it easier for large corporations to offshore American jobs because it lowers taxes for companies that go abroad. Now, other than that, it's a really good bill. Now, let me get into just a few of the specifics. This legislation, now remember, we are in the midst of mass income and wealth inequality. Middle class shrinking, 41 million people living in poverty, people on top doing phenomenally well. What this legislation in the Senate does is it provides 62% of the benefits to the top 62% of the benefits go to the top 1%. Approximately 40% of the benefits go to the top 1/10 of 1%. Meanwhile, at the end of the decade, 87 million middle-class households will be paying more in taxes. Now, why is that? The reason is that the tax cuts in the bill for middle-class families expire by the end of 2025. Surprise, surprise, the tax breaks for large corporations are permanent. Apparently, and it is really hard to understand where these people live, but apparently Trump and his Republican friends think that it makes sense to give 62% of the benefits to the 1% and force millions of working class and middle class families to pay more in taxes. The President of the United States will tell you, and Senator Turner touched on this, they will tell you that trickle-down economics, giving tax breaks to the wealthy and large corporations, will expand the economy, it will create new jobs, and it will bring in so much new revenue that will pay for the deficit it creates. The simple truth is trickle-down economics is a fraudulent theory. It's a fraud. It has never worked. It failed under Ronald Reagan. It failed under George W. Bush. And most recently, it failed in Kansas, where the state government there put it into effect. And now their legislature has to undo what they did. The Joint Committee on Taxation has told us that this bill, over a 10-year period, will run up the deficit by $1.4 trillion. All right? That is money that is going to have to be paid back by our kids and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. But I'll tell you also why that deficit is so important. Now, mark my words. I'm saying this here today. It is my view that within a few weeks, or at most a few months, the Republican leadership will come to the House and the Senate and they'll say, we have got to do something about a $20 trillion national debt. In other words, they have the chutzpah. It's a highly technical word. They have the gall to run up the deficit by $1.4 trillion, and then they're going to come back to the American people and say, oh, my word, we are going to have to do something about that deficit. And what they will do, and I am absolutely certain that they will make that effort, they're going to come back and they are going to cut benefits for those who are on or will be on Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, nutrition, and educational programs, and affordable housing, among many other programs that are desperately needed by working families around this country. Well, that sums it up pretty well. What they are doing is looting the federal government to give tax breaks to people who don't need those tax breaks, while they then come back and cut programs for those people in desperate need. This is a moral outrage. It is bad economics, and we will not allow them to get away with it. Now, when you turn on the television, when you turn on the TV, you will never hear them say, we're going to cut Social Security or Medicare. They don't use that word. They say we are going to go about entitlement reform or welfare reform. But let me tell you exactly what they mean by those nice-sounding phrases. Right now in this country, we have tens of millions of people who are 50, 55, 60 years of age, people who have worked their entire lives who end up having virtually nothing in the bank as they approach retirement. They are often exhausted, they have illnesses, and they hope they can make it, that they can stay alive to get their Medicare and their Social Security. And what these guys will do, what these guys are planning to do, we don't know exactly the form that it will be. They're throwing around a number of different ideas. One of their ideas is to raise the eligibility age for Social Security and Medicare. Now, you tell me what happens to somebody who has worked his or her entire life, who is sick, who desperately needs health insurance, and they raise that eligibility age for Medicare from 65 to 67. How many of those people will not make it to 67? And then they got another idea. And then they have another idea, and their idea is to cut Social Security cost of living increases. Anybody here on Social Security? All right. Over the last many years, you have seen increases of 0, of maybe 1%, if you're lucky, maybe 2%. And there are people in Washington who think that those benefits are too generous, and they need to come up with a new formula to lower those benefits. That's called what they call a chained CPI. So when you hear on TV people talking about a chained CPI, God knows where that came from. I have no idea. But what it means is lower cost of living increases. Furthermore, they will slash Medicaid in their budget. They wanted to cut it by $1 trillion. And I want everybody to know, Medicaid is the program that provides health insurance for low-income and working-class Americans and for their kids. And if you know somebody who is in a nursing home, there is a very strong likelihood that Medicaid is paying that bill. In their budget, they wanted to cut Medicaid by $1 trillion. I expect they will be back trying to do that again. But it's not only Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. Right now, in Ohio and Vermont, all over this country, you got bright young people who desperately want a higher education, but they can't get that education because college is so expensive. Now, what I believe, what Nina Turner believes, and what I think most of you believe, that in the year 2017, we should be making public colleges and universities tuition free. In other words, In other words, in a competitive global economy, we want all of our people, regardless of income, to get the quality education they need and they deserve. But the Republicans have a different idea. Mark my words, they will come back with massive cuts to Pell Grants, the most important federal source of funding to help working class people get into college. Furthermore, they're going to cut nutrition programs, whether it is food stamps or the WIC program. You know what the WIC program is? The WIC program is a program that helps low-income pregnant women and their newborn babies. They intend and have made it clear in their budget they will cut the WIC program. In the wintertime, it gets cold in Vermont and many parts of the country. People use the LIHEAP program to stay warm. They want to make massive cuts to that program. And on it goes. What they are trying to do is to transform the United States of America, to move us into an oligarchic form of society, to give massive tax breaks to billionaires who certainly don't need them, and then at the same time strip away program after program that is desperately needed by working families. This is class warfare, and we're going to stand up and fight back. Now, brothers and sisters, let me tell you something that's interesting. All of these ideas, including the Republican effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act, including the Republican effort for so-called tax reform and tax breaks for billionaires, all of those programs and ideas and legislation are enormously unpopular. Poll after poll says, when asked by pollsters, do you think we should give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Social Security? People say, are you nuts? Of course not. Republicans say no. Democrats say no. Independents say no. Why then, in the midst of mass and vast unpopularity, do they go forward with this type of legislation? And the answer can be summarized in one phrase: follow the money. Last night, right around the Senate, you had dozens of lobbyists pushing for their tax breaks. Under this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision, the Koch brothers and other billionaires have put hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars into the political process to elect right-wing Republicans. What last night was about was payback time. That's what it was about. That legislation had nothing to do with what the American people wanted. It had everything to do with what wealthy campaign contributors wanted. And that is why, among many other things, we have got to overturn this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. And why we have got to move to public funding of elections. The Koch brothers are entitled to their votes, but they are not entitled to buy a political party and buy elections. But our job, brothers and sisters, is not only to take on the Koch brothers and their employees in the United States Congress, because that's what they are. Our job is to create an alternative and progressive vision. And what I want to tell all of you, and I want you to believe this because this is true, we are winning the fight for the vision of the future of America. Our vision, your vision, is gaining momentum all across this country. Nina Turner was telling me she just came back from Texas. Incredible response there. Up in Maine, we're doing well. We're doing well from coast to coast. Now, some of you recall all of 3 weeks ago on November 7th, there were elections all over this country. Donald Trump's name may not have been on the ballot, but Trumpism was on the ballot, and it lost badly. And what we saw, not only in big governors' races, what we saw at the school board level, city council level, state legislature level, we saw people running for office, working people, young people, running for the first time and winning. One of the statements that cheered me up the most, some fella in Virginia, way up in the Republican Party, he said, in Virginia, we were losing races to people we had never even heard of. That's you! Young people and working people who had never been in politics before started running for state legislature and for city council, and they won in big numbers all across the country. So it seems to me, we have a twofold agenda. Number one, we have got to stand up to Trump every single day, stand up to his racism, his sexism, his homophobia, his xenophobia. We've got to do that. But there is another thing that we have to do. Just saying no to Trump is not good enough. We have got to give people hope, and we have got to give people a vision. And I just want to very briefly, touch on some of those issues that I think constitute a progressive agenda, an agenda of where this country should be going and where the American people want us to go. Trump's ideas, throwing 30 million people off of health insurance, giving tax breaks to billionaires, raising taxes on the middle class, nobody supports that. But people do support a vision which says that it is about time that the billionaires and large corporations in this country who are doing phenomenally well start paying their fair share of taxes. People support a vision which says that in America, if you work 40 hours a week, you shouldn't be living in poverty. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. And people support the vision and justice of saying that if you are a woman, you should not be making 80 cents on the dollar compared to a man. And if you are a woman, you have the right to control your body, not the government. And a progressive vision says there is something fundamentally wrong in our country when the United States remains the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people as a right. And that is why, with the nurses and with people all over this country, there is more and more momentum for a Medicare for all single-payer program. I was up in Canada. I was up in Toronto a couple of months ago, and I went for a tour through some of their hospitals, met a lot of their doctors, and it really is an amazing experience to go into a hospital, talk to people who are in the hospital, who are in bed, and say, no, we don't have to worry. You know, we're worried about getting well. We don't have to worry about the kind of bill that might have been accumulated. And then you talk to the doctors who say, we practice medicine in a way to make our patients well. We don't have to worry whether or not they can afford this or that procedure. Now, if they could do it in Canada, and if they could do it in every other major country, don't tell me the United States of America can't do it. Now, the Republicans want to cut Social Security. We have a different vision. Our vision is that if you're on Social Security today and you're making $12,000, $13,000 a year, that ain't enough. Our job is to expand Social Security, not cut it. President Trump thinks that climate change is a hoax. Well, you talk to the people of Puerto Rico or the Virgin Islands who have been devastated by the incredible storms that recently hit them, which were exacerbated by climate change. Our job, and I want you to think about the jobs that we can create, the leadership role this country can play in the world by leading this planet in transforming our energy system away from fossil fuel. Into energy efficiency and sustainable energy. Donald Trump is busy trying to denigrate and insult immigrants. As somebody whose father came to this country at the age of 17, I know you will join me in saying we're going to stand with immigrants and fight for comprehensive immigration reform. This country, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, has more people in jail today, over 2 million people. Largely African American, Latino, Native American. We spend $80 billion a year at the local, state, and federal level locking up fellow Americans. Well, it makes a lot more sense to me to be investing in jobs and education for our young people rather than jails and incarceration. All right, brothers and sisters, we are at an historical and pivotal moment in American history. On one side, you have a handful of billionaires who have bought a large part of the United States Congress, a group of oligarchs who are motivated by greed, and more greed. Now, I can never understand how you could have, as the Koch brothers do, $90 or $100 billion and feel the desperate need to lower your taxes so you could have even more. I would think that with $90, $100 billion, you might be able to just get by. And I think I want you to think about it. You know, we all know people who have one addictive problem or another, God knows. In Ohio, in Vermont, we have this horrible opioid addiction problem. We know people who are into alcohol. I think that for these billionaires, they suffer from a serious addictive problem. And I mean that. I'm not being facetious here. I think there is something weird and wrong about people who need more and more and more, and they're willing to step over the elderly and the children and the sick in order to get more and more and more. Well, our job is to tell them that we are going to end that sickness for them. They have an addiction, and we're going to treat that addiction. Because we are going to create an economy and a government that works for all of us, not just them. Which gets me back to where I started. And that is, I want to reiterate, you are all very powerful people when you stand together. It was a beautiful thing. A few months ago, Republicans, members of Congress, they held town meetings. And previously, they would have 40 or 50 people coming out talking about how you can give tax breaks to business. Suddenly, they found themselves in a room like this with 1,000 people who were saying, you are not going to cut my wife's health insurance because she's going to die. And that's what we have got to do now. In terms of this tax bill, what passed the Senate last night will go probably into a conference committee with the House. They have significant differences that they have to reconcile, which gives us 3-4 weeks to rally the American people. So I hope that you will do everything you can here in Ohio. Tell Senator Portman and tell all of those members of the House that this country and this state do not need more tax breaks for billionaires. And then the day after we defeat these tax proposals, we have got to continue our efforts. Please never, ever forget, we are the vast majority of the American people. Every idea that I mentioned to you today has the support of the vast majority of the American people. Their ideas have very little support. So what our job is to bring people together. Don't let them divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our religion. Let us stand together. Let us think big. Let us transform this country. Thank you all very much.